Hi guys, Olive here today to talk to you about the 10 most popular books that are currently on my TBR. This has been a video I've seen floating around BookTube over the past few weeks, and I've always been really intrigued by it. I immediately was curious to go onto my Goodreads and see what the 10 most popular books on my TBR were. I decided when picking out this list of 10 most popular books on my TBR that I was going to go by number of Goodreads ratings. So the higher number of ratings, the more popular it is. And I also decided, if only for the purpose of novelty, that I wasn't going to include classics on this list. A good number of the most popular books on my TBR are in fact classics, but I talk a lot about classics. I have my own classics TBR that I work on every single year. So instead, this list consists of all the most popular non-classic fiction as well as nonfiction currently on my TBR. I'm going to be talking about these books in descending order, so you will see the most popular book on my TBR at the end of the video. But the 10th most popular book that is currently on my TBR is The Magicians by Lev Grossman. This is the first book in a very popular fantasy trilogy that now has been turned into a TV series on Sci-Fi. A lot of people refer to the Magicians trilogy as the grown-up Harry Potter. So it's about a group of students in a magical school, but it has a lot more adult themes. That definitely sounded appealing to me, and I really do enjoy picking up a good fantasy novel when I'm in the mood for one. But for whatever reason, I just haven't gotten to this one yet. As I've said several different times before, I'm not the biggest fan of book series. I much prefer standalones. But a couple years back, when I was apparently in the mood to spend money, I bought the entire box set of the Magicians trilogy. So it's not like I can say I won't have the next book to move on to if I do eventually get to the first one. I was really pleasantly surprised when I went through and looked at my Goodreads TBR to see just how many nonfiction books made up the top 10. Surprisingly enough, 3 books out of the total 10 books that I'm going to be talking to you about today were nonfiction, but not so surprisingly, 2 of those are true crime. The first being Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil by John Berendt. As I said, this is a true crime book that talks about a murder that happened in an old mansion in Savannah, Georgia in the early 1980s. I originally thought that this book was a novel. I was actually really surprised to find out that this was nonfiction, but I'm all the more interested in it because of that fact. This seems to have really gothic, obviously very mysterious vibes. It's something that I think will be great to read in the fall, and perhaps I'll read it this fall. The 8th most popular book on my TBR is called The God of Small Things by Erin Dottie. I have heard absolutely wonderful things about this novel. It is set in India, and we hop back and forth in time between 1969 and 1993. We are following a set of twins who somehow become separated, but then are reunited in the more up-to-date sections. Erin Dottie only just recently published her second novel, the very long-awaited follow-up to The God of Small Things, called The Ministry of Utmost Happiness. I know a lot of people loved that book as well, and I'm certainly interested in reading it, but I feel like I need to read The God of Small Things first. The 7th most popular book on my TBR is another work of nonfiction, and that is A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. This copy is actually my husband's book. He read about 3/4 of this book and spoke so highly of it that it convinced me to put it on my TBR as well. The only Bill Bryson that I have read so far was his book At Home, which I read in early 2017. I wasn't the biggest fan of that book, so I've been a little bit hesitant to pick up anything else by Bill Bryson, but I will say I am starting to have more positive feelings about Bill Bryson in general because my husband is currently reading In a Sunburned Country, which is all about his travels to Australia. The portions that he has been reading to me from that book have been absolutely hysterical, and I am remembering all the good things that my husband did say about this book back when he was reading it. So perhaps I owe Bill Bryson a second chance. Number 6 on this list is The 13th Tale by Diane Satterfield. This is one of those delicious books about books that us book lovers just can't get enough of. This book follows a young biographer who is tasked to write the history of a very famous writer who has spent her entire career writing alternative realities for herself. But as this mysterious author is growing older and facing more and more health issues, she is finally ready to tell her story to this biographer. This book reminds me a lot of The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but in a bookish capacity. I have been so excited to pick up this book for such a long period of time. I don't know why I've waited this long, but I gotta fix that pretty soon. Continuing to move up the list, in the 5th slot is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. Similarly to The Magicians, this is yet another first book in a fantasy series. This one is also similar to The Magicians in that I have heard very mixed reviews about both of these series. I keep seeing this book on my shelves. Like, I'm looking at my my shelves and it always catches my eye, but every time I see it and really start to think about it, I wonder whether or not I'm ever going to actually read this. I feel like I've just seen a few too many lukewarm or negative reviews about this book and this series in general. Please let me know down in the comment section below if you think it's worth my time. Fourth on this list is another work of fantasy, and that is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. In a recent video, I talked about the fact that I am not super interested in reading American Gods, but I am really interested in reading other works of Neil Gaiman's, like Neverwhere. I feel like it wasn't too long ago that I actually put this book on one of my TBRs and meant to get to it, and then got distracted by other books, as I do. I've always gotten this sense that this would be a book best read during the winter time. If you've read this book, please let me know if I'm correct or incorrect in that assumption. Moving higher up this list to the most popular books that are currently on my TBR in the third slot is Atonement by Ian Mcewan. This is a work of literary / historical fiction that starts in 1935 when a young girl thinks she sees something. She reports this, and this has long-reaching consequences throughout the rest of the book. As the book progresses through World War II, we see all these characters and the ways in which their lives were changed based on this one incident many years prior. I am a big fan of Ian Mcewan. His books are a big reason why I got back into reading after I kind of stopped during college. But when I tried to pick up this book for the first time, I just don't think I was in the right headspace for it. This is a very melancholy, very deep novel, so you definitely have to be in the right mood for it. It's going to be one I get back to. I'm just not quite sure when. The second most popular book on my TBR is the other true crime book that I was mentioning earlier, and that is The Devil in the White City by Erik Larsson. This book is massively popular, as you might assume, and follows the 1893 World's Fair that took place in Chicago and the serial killer that used the World's Fair to be able to commit his crimes. Of this entire list of books, this is probably the one that I am most excited about and the one that I will probably be picking up first. And the number one book on this list, the most popular book that is currently on my TBR, is Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. Ironically enough, of all the books on this list, this is probably the one I have the most conflicted feelings about. The reason that is the case is because the only other Jeffrey Eugenides novel that I have read is The Marriage Plot, which might be one of my least favorite books of all time. After I finished that book, I kind of vowed silently that I would never want to read Jeffrey Eugenides ever again, but I was talked into giving this novel a try by Stephanie over at That's What She Read. Stephanie and I definitely have very different tastes in reading. A lot of books that she loves, I don't think I would click with, and vice versa. But when we got together not too long ago, she spoke so highly of this book and spoke about it in a way that made me think I could probably give it a try. But I am definitely still licking my wounds after the really bad experience I had with The Marriage Plot, so I will be tiptoeing my way through this book and seeing how it goes. So those are the top 10 most popular books that are currently on my TBR on Goodreads. I think I'm going to add it to my yearly goals to try to read at least 3 off of this list. Although I am typically not driven to pick up a book because of its popularity, I do feel as though I want to have read a few of these to be able to join in some more conversations. Plus, there's the fact that I've been meaning to pick up these books for a really long time. 90% of them are owned by my household. 2 of them are my husband's books. So I really would like to read at least 3 of these throughout the year. I would love to hear from you down in the comment section below which of the 3 you think I should prioritize. I can tell you almost for certain that The Devil in the White City is going to be among those 3, but I would love your suggestions about the other 2. You can put those thoughts or any other comments or questions you might have down in the comment section below, or you can find me on a variety of different places on social media. The links to all of my profiles are linked in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!